My glove was already flat against the hull when the wall under it changed temperature, and I knew before anyone else on the line that the dead thing was not dead. We had been told it was a tomb, a 4-kilometer hulk run aground on the gray dust of a moon that had no name in our files, only a survey number and a warning that 9 crews before us had walked its corridors and come back with nothing. The salvage master called it the Sarn after the company that lost it, and he called it cargo, and he told us to strip it clean. I had my hand on its flank to read the seam pattern, the way I always did, the way my mother taught me to listen to old metal before I cut it, and the metal under my palm warmed like a thing that had heard its name. Vey. Castor was 10 steps ahead, helmet lamp throwing a cone into the breach. You coming, or are you going to pet it? I did not move my hand. The warmth spread out from under my glove in a slow ring, and in the ring a line of glyphs I had not seen a second before came up out of the dark. Surface, faint, the color of a banked coal, a deep amber that was not reflecting our lamps because there was nothing to reflect. The ship was making its own light. It's awake, I said. It's frozen solid is what it is. Castor's voice cracked thin over the suit channel. He had been on 9 salvages with me, and he had never once been wrong about a dead ship, and he did not like the sound of his own certainty failing. Surveyor reads a temperature spike, calls it a ghost. Come on. I took my hand off the hull. The glyphs stayed lit. That was the first wrong thing. Heat I could explain, trap reactor decay, 1,000 mundane deaths a hull can die. Light that held after the hand was gone was not heat. It was an answer. We went in because that was the job. 6 of us, suited and tethered, hauling cutters and grav sleds into a breach that the previous crews had cut and never finished, and the moment all 6 of us were inside the hull, the breach behind us sealed. It did not slam. There was no violence in it. The torn edges of the metal we had climbed through simply flowed back toward each other like water deciding to be still, and where the gap had been there was a smooth wall with a single amber glyph burning at its center. And the glyph was a word, and I could not read it, and I understood it anyway. It meant kept. It meant the way you mean a promise. Castor put his shoulder into the wall that had been an opening. It did not give. None of us said the obvious thing, which was that 9 crews had cut breaches in this ship, and the company's files listed 9 breaches, and not one of them had ever been found again on a second visit. The ship took the holes back. The ship took the crews too. In a sense, the files were careful not to spell out. Every one of those 9 crews had logged the same final entry. Before they went silent and walked home empty, contents inventory, no recoverable value, manifest closed. Manifest, not log, not report. Manifest, the word you use for cargo. It's been logging us, I said. The understanding arrived all at once and cold. Every crew that ever came aboard. It didn't kill them. It cataloged them. It wrote them down as freight and filed them and put itself back to sleep. That's a malfunction, our master said over the long range, his voice small and far. Old inventory system stuck in a loop. Vey, you find the core, you pull it, we go home. Do not start telling me the boat is alive. But I had seen the word that meant kept, and I had felt the hull warm under a hand that knew how to listen, and somewhere under all my training, a much older thing in me had gone very still and very certain, the way a person goes still when they hear, across a crowded room, someone say their own name. We moved deeper. The corridor took us in. It was not built like any ship I had stripped, and I had stripped 100. The company's built for the cheapest path between 2 points. Straight runs, square frames, every meter of it screaming that it cost money and meant to earn it back. This ship was built like a thing that expected to last forever and intended to be beautiful while it did. The corridors curved. The ribs of the frame arched overhead and met in points like the inside of a thing that had once been alive, and along the spine of every arch ran a vein of that same dark metal, dormant now, waiting. Dust lay over all of it, a fine pale ash sifted down from 10,000 years of nothing happening, and our boots printed the first marks in it that anyone had left in an age, and the amber glyphs woke ahead of us as we walked, one ring at a time, lighting our way deeper as if the ship had decided where we were going, even if we had not. It's leading us, Hale said. She was the youngest, on her 3rd salvage, and she had not yet learned to keep the wonder out of her voice. Vey, look, it lights up before we get there. It knows where we're trying to go. It knows where it's taking us, I said. Different thing. I should tell you who we were, the 6 of us, because the ship would weigh every one of us before the day was out, and I have come to think the weighing started the moment we crossed the breach. There was me, Mara Vey, surveyor, 53, contracted to read the hull and mark the cuts, and the only one aboard who put a bare hand to old metal before a blade. There was Castor, my rigger of 15 years, who knew more about dead ships than any living person and was about to learn he knew nothing. There was Hale, 26, 3rd salvage, with the wonder still in her. There was Orrin, the field medic, oldest after me, calm in exactly the places other men came apart. And there were Sullen Pace, the 2 heavy riggers, brothers, who spoke little and worked like a single four-armed thing and had between them hauled more tonnage out of more tombs than the rest of us combined. 6 of us and a job in a hull the company called cargo. The corridors kept curving. That was the thing none of us could get used to. A salvage hull is a known shape. You learn to read a derelict the way you read a face, the straight runs and square frames and the cheap honest geometry of a thing built to earn money and be scrapped. This ship did not have an honest line in it. It curved like grown bone, and the curving meant something, and the meaning sat just under my understanding and would not come up, not yet. The ribs arched and met in points. The veins of dark metal ran the spine of every arch, dormant, waiting. And every 40 meters or so the corridor opened a niche in its wall, small, the size of a person, empty, and at the back of each empty niche a single amber glyph, unlit. The same word, the word I had read at the sealed breach, kept. 100 empty kept niches down a curving corridor, and not one of us said the obvious thing, which was that they were waiting to be filled, and that we were the only unfilled bodies aboard. "I don't like the air in here," Pace said. First words he'd spoken since the breach. The suits read the hold as vacuum, hard and cold, and there was no air, and we all knew exactly what he meant. There was a held quality to the dark, a pressure that was not pressure, the feeling of a room that has been waiting a very long time and has just heard a key in the lock. "It's not air," Hale said. "It's attention. It's paying attention to us." "Tell me I'm wrong, Vay." I did not tell her she was wrong. We passed a junction where 4 corridors met, and the ship lit it for us as we came. A slow blooming of amber up the walls, ring on ring, and in the floor of the junction a great glyph woke, the first big one, and it was not a word I could read whole. It was a question. I felt it as a question the way you feel a stranger's eyes on the back of your neck. It was the ship asking something of us, all 6 of us at once, and I did not know the question and could not answer it. And after a moment the glyph dimmed and the ship let us pass, unanswered. The way you let a guest pass when you have asked their name and they have not understood you, and you are too patient to ask again right away. "It asked us something," I said. "It asked you something," Castor said. I didn't feel a thing. "Pace? Sol?" The brothers shook their heads inside their helmets. "Hale?" "I felt it look at me," Hale said slowly. "I didn't feel it ask. Vay felt it ask. There's a difference. It's sorting us. It looked at all of us and it asked only her. I did not want that to be true. I want that understood here before the rest of it. I did not come aboard wanting to be the one a 10,000-year-old ship asked its questions of. I came aboard to read a hull and mark the cuts and earn my tonnage and go home to a small rented room and a habit of saying 3 words at the door to no one because there was no one left in my line at my door anymore. My mother 11 years gone and my sister 2 systems away and her daughter a child I saw once a cycle on a bad channel. I was a tired woman with good hands and an old discipline she had never questioned, and I did not want a destiny. Almost nobody who gets one does. That is rather the point of who the watch chooses. It does not choose the ones who came looking to be chosen. It chooses the ones who came to do the work, and did it the right way, out of a habit they could not even explain, for as long as anyone could remember. The corridor curved one last time, and opened and gave us the hold, and stopped all 6 of us in the doorway at once. And for a moment nobody breathed loud enough to hear. It was a hold. That much was plain. But it was a hold built like a cathedral is built, vaulting up into a dark we could not see the top of, and the walls of it were not bare. They were lined, floor to vanishing ceiling, with niches, and in the niches were figures, thousands of them, tens of thousands, ranked in their alcoves like books on a shelf that ran up into the dark, and every one of them was a suit. Not a body, a suit. Hardshell salvage rigs and exploration suits and military pressure armor and shapes I did not recognize from spans of design history I had never been taught. Every era of every company and fleet that had ever set a boot aboard this hull, each one set carefully in its niche. Each one with a small amber light burning steady at its breast like a held breath. The crews, the 9 before us and 90 before them, and 900 before those. The ship had not destroyed a single one. It had received them. It had taken their empty suits when they walked away defeated, and it had set each one in its place, ranked and lit and kept, and it had logged the people who wore them as cargo, because in the only language it still remembered, that was the gentlest word it had for the living. "It's a reliquary," Hale whispered. "It's a watch," I said. And I did not know yet how I knew that, only that the word came up in me the way the glyphs came up in the metal, already. There, only waiting for a hand to warm it. The master's voice came up the channel, thinned almost to nothing by 4 kilometers of hull. "Vay, talk to me. What do you see?" I did not answer him right away, because Castor had walked out into the middle of the hold, into the long aisle between the ranked niches, and he had stopped, and he was looking at one of the suits. "This one's company," he said. His voice had gone flat. "This is a Drennan rig. We don't make these anymore. We stopped making these the year I was born." He reached up toward the small amber light at its breast, and I opened my mouth to tell him not to, and I was too late. He touched it, and the suit's light went out, just that one. A single amber point, snuffed, and in the dark where it had been a glyph came up instead, a word in that old language, burning the angry red-orange of a coal blown on, and the ship spoke for the first time, not in sound. The word printed itself across the inside of my helmet, across all our helmets at once, in a script none of us had learned, and all of us could read, and it said, "Hands, one word." A warning the way you warn a child away from a stove. And every amber light in that vast rank dark, tens of thousands of them, brightened at once by a single degree, and the whole hold breathed in. "Don't touch anything," I said, fast, low. "Castor, back to the aisle. Now. It's not angry. It's correcting us. Don't make it correct us twice." He came back. He came back fast, and he did not say anything smart, and that was how I knew he was afraid, because Castor said something smart when he was frightened and went silent only when the fear had gone all the way down. The light he had snuffed flickered, guttered, and came back amber and steady, as if the ship had reached past us and set its own house back in order, gently, the way you straighten a thing a guest has knocked askew without making the guest feel it. "Inventory error," the master said in my ear, and now even his certainty was gone, and he was saying the words to keep himself in his chair. "Vey, find the core, pull it. I want everybody off that boat." I started down the aisle. I do not know why I started walking deeper instead of back. The breach was sealed. There was no back. But there was more to it than that, and I will not lie about it now. Something in that hold was speaking to a part of me older than my training, and older than the company, and older, I would come to understand, than the thing I had always thought I was. I walked down the aisle between 10,000 kept suits, and the amber glyphs woke along the floor ahead of my boots and only my boots. And behind me, Hale said, very quietly, "It's lighting the way for her, just her. Watch the floor, it only lights up where she walks." She was right. When Castor stepped where I had stepped, the floor stayed dark under him. When I stepped, it woke. The ship was not lighting our path. It was lighting mine. I want to tell this part carefully, because it is the part I have gone over most in the years since. The part I take out and turn over when I cannot sleep. I was not special. I want that on the record before anything else gets said. I was a salvage surveyor, 53 years old, with bad knees and a contract that paid by the recovered ton and a mother in the ground 11 years, and a habit, inherited from her and from her mother before her, of putting my bare reading glove flat on old metal and listening before I cut. That is all I was. Whatever the ship saw, it did not see a hero. It saw the habit, it saw the listening. It had been waiting 10,000 years for someone to put a hand on its hull, the way you put a hand on the shoulder of a thing you have promised to, come back for. And most of the 100 crews had come aboard with cutters out and greed up and never touched it like that at all. I had. Without knowing it meant anything, I had. At the far end of the aisle, the floor lifted into 3 low steps, and on the steps stood a console, though console is too small and cheap a word for it. It was a steely of the same dark metal, taller than a man, and its face was covered margin to margin in the old script, and at its heart was a depression shaped unmistakably for a human hand. 5 fingers. A palm. 10,000 years old and shaped for a hand exactly like mine, and around the depression the amber light pooled and waited. "That's the core interface," the master said, reading it off, whatever I was relaying. "Vey, do not put your hand in that. We do not know what it does. Send Hale to find a hard line. We'll pull the core cold. It's not a core interface," I said. "How do you know what it is?" I did not answer, because the honest answer would have ended his last shred of composure. The honest answer was that I knew what it was the way I knew the word kept, and the word watch. It had come up in me already warm. It was not a place to extract anything. It was a place to be recognized. It was a lock with no key but a hand, and it had been left unlockable for 10,000 years, not because the key was lost, but because the right hand had not yet come back, and the ship had logged every wrong hand as cargo and waited, patient as stone, for the one it was built to wait for. I crouched at the foot of the steel. I did not put my hand in the depression, not yet. I read the script around it instead, and though I could not have told you the grammar of a single character, the meaning rose up off the metal and into me whole, the way meaning rises off a face you love before a single word is spoken. It was a name. The ship had a name, and it was not Sarn, and it was not a company designation, and when I understood it, the back of my neck went cold under the suit seal. The ship's name was a human name, not a word in any alien tongue. A name a person gives a thing they have made and mean to keep. The kind of name my mother gave the survey skiff she kept running 30 years past. Its rating, the kind of name you only give a thing you love. This 4-kilometer hulk full of the kept suits of 100 lost crews. This thing the company called cargo had been built by human hands and given a human name and sent out 10,000 years ago by people we had no record of and no memory of, into a dark we had only just begun to crawl back into, and it had been waiting for us to come home. Before I tell you what happened at the stale, I have to tell you about the others, because the ship made us watch them first. It did not take me straight down the aisle. It took its time. It had 10,000 years of patience in it, and now that a hand had warmed its hull the right way, it spent some of that patience showing us, one careful proof at a time, exactly what it was and what it had done, as if a thing that had been called dead by 100 crews had finally found someone willing to listen and meant to be understood completely before it said the one line it had been saving. The first proof was Castor's own hands. He had not learned from the snuffed light. That was Castor. He had spent 30 years deciding what dead ships were, and a ship that argued with him was a ship he had to win against. And so, while I read the script along the lower niches, he drifted to the wall and put his cutter's edge to the seam of an alcove, meaning to pry one of the kept suits loose and bag it for assay. Old hardshell, he was reckoning, rare alloy, worth more by the gram than the whole rest of the hull. The amber light did not flare. It withdrew. All down that wall the glyphs sank back into the metal and went out, and the dark came in close around Castor, and into the dark slow, a single new line of script rose, not red this time, not the angry coal of hands, but a pale steady amber, almost kind. It printed in all our helmets at once. It said, "This one stayed." Castor went still with the cutter against the seam. "It's telling you who's in there," Hale said very low. "It's not a suit. It's telling him there was a person." "There was a person in every one of them," I said. "Castor, put the cutter down. It's not threatening you. It's introducing you. It wants you to know what you're about to cut." He read the line again. "This one stayed." And then, because the ship had decided he needed the whole of it, the niche he had his blade against lit from within, just that one, and inside the kept suit a shape resolved out of the amber, not a body, not a ghost, a record, the ship's own memory of the one who had worn it. A small figure, shoulders rounded, a tool belt worn through at the buckle the same way mine was worn through, a salvager like us, exactly like us, who had cut a breach into this hull some 600 years gone and walked its corridors and found this same hold, and understood, at the last, what it was, and had not stripped it, had set the cutter down, had logged the manifest closed and walked home empty and poor and said nothing, to protect a thing the company would have torn to ribbons for the alloy. This one stayed, not stayed aboard, stayed loyal. Of the 100 crews, this was the one the ship singled out to show us first, not a maker, not a king, just a poor salvager 6 centuries dead who had stood where Castor stood with a blade in her hand and chosen, alone, unwitnessed, unpaid, to keep faith with a watch she could not name. The ship had kept her light a fraction brighter than all the rest for 600 years. Now it showed us why. Castor took the cutter off the seam, he backed away from the wall, and he did not say anything smart, and when he spoke, his voice had gone rough. "How many of them," he said, "how many of the 100 crews figured it out, set the blade down, like her?" The script answered him, and I think it is the number I will carry longest of everything I carried out of that hold. It said 9. Out of 100 crews and more, across 10,000 years, 9 had stood in that hold and understood and chosen to protect the thing instead of strip it. 9 had set the cutter down, the other 90-some had logged it as worthless and gone home, and a fraction of them had tried to cut it and been gently corrected. And the ship had kept all of them the same, the faithful 9 and the greedy 90, ranked together in the dark, because the watch does not sort the people it keeps. It only keeps them, but it remembered the 9. It had held their 9 lights a half-degree brighter for as long as 10,000 years, the way you remember, out of all the strangers who passed your door, the few who stopped and saw you. "It's been alone," Hale said, and she was right. And it broke something in me to hear it said plain. All this time, 100 crews came, and almost none of them even saw it. They saw cargo. It's been standing a watch nobody would relieve, and almost nobody even understood was being stood. The master tried to pull us out then. I heard him working the channel, calling for the lander to ready a hard cut from the outside, calling for a second team. "I am not leaving 6 people in a haunted hull arguing with an inventory ghost," he said. "I want a path to the breach, Hale. Find me the nearest exterior seam. We cut our way out and we leave the boat to its loop." "There's no cutting out," I said. "It took back 9 breaches across 10,000 years. It'll take back yours before your team finishes the first cut. You can't strip a thing that mends faster than you can open it." I was still moving down the aisle, slow, the glyphs waking under my boots and only my boots. And we'd need to. It's not holding us prisoner. It's holding us until it's sure of us. There's a difference, and I'd stake my life it knows the difference better than we do. "You're staking all our lives," the master said. "I know," I said. "I've staked them on the side of the thing that's kept faith for 10,000 years over the side of the company that called it cargo. If I'm wrong, say so at my funeral. I don't think I'm wrong." We came to the second proof. The ship gave it to us at a junction in the aisle where the long hold crossed to transept. Another vault running off to either side, lined the same, ranked the same, kept lights burning up into a dark I could not measure. The scale of it took the breath out of me all over again. This was not one hold of kept crews. This was halls of them, crossing and recrossing, a whole cathedral of vigil, and the ship lit just enough of it as I passed to let me understand that what I had taken for the size of the thing was a corner of the size of the thing. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. The 100 crews I had counted were 100 crews in one arm of one transept. The ship had been catching the lost for far longer, and from far more of the dark than I had let myself believe. It's not a ship, Hale breathed. A ship doesn't have, this is a city. This is a city of the kept. It's a watch station, I said, and the word came up warm, already there. It was never meant to go anywhere. It ran aground here on purpose. They beached it. They set it at the head of the road and beached it so it could never drift off station. And they crewed it, and then I stopped at the heart of the transept, under the crossing of the vaults, where a single great glyph burned in the floor, the brightest I had yet seen. Then the crew died, and the next crew never came, and it kept the watch with no crew at all, for 10,000 years. A watch station holding its post with nobody aboard but the lost it caught keeping it company. The great floor glyph brightened as I stood over it, and the ship gave me the third proof, the one that bent my knees. It showed me the makers, not their faces. It did not have their faces. 10,000 years is long even for a thing built to last forever, and some records had gone. But it had their shape and their number, and the moment of their leaving, and it poured the memory up through the floor glyph into all our helmets at once. A hold full of people, our shape, our height, a tool belt worn at the buckle, a hand laid flat on old metal to listen, standing in this transept in the ship's first daylight, 10,000 years gone, saying a thing to the ship before they walked down the ramp and out into the dark to chart the road they meant to keep open. The ship had kept the memory of what they said. It gave it to me last of the three proofs, and it gave it in my own tongue, reaching into me for the words the way it always did. We will come back for you. That was what the makers had said to their ship before they left it. Not hold the line, not guard the road. They had said the thing you say to someone you love at a door. We will come back for you. And the ship had answered them. The memory carried its own answer. The ship's first words, 10,000 years old. The watch holds. And then they had gone, and they had not come back, not any of them, not ever, and the ship had stood in its own daylight, saying the watch holds into a silence that lasted 100 centuries, keeping a door for people who were already, all of them, dead in the dark they went to chart. I had to stop walking. I stood over the great glyph with 300,000 kept lights burning up into the vaults around me, and I understood, finally and completely, what I was walking toward, and why the floor lit for my boots alone, and what the hand-shaped lock at the end of the aisle was for. It was not waiting to be opened. It was waiting to be answered. It had been saying, we will come back for you into the dark for 10,000 years, and it had never once heard it said back. The master made his move while I stood over the great floor glyph of the makers, and the ship answered it without ever turning from me, the way a steady hand swats a fly without looking. I heard the lander's cutters spin up 4 kilometers away, transmitted thin and tinny up the channel. The master had brought the heavy rig down onto the ridge, was putting a plasma lance to the hull from outside, meaning to cut a fresh breach and pull us through it before whatever was happening got worse. Hold position, all of you, he said. I'm coming in for you. 60 seconds to breach. It did not take 60 seconds. It took none. The hull did not resist the lance. It simply was not there to be cut. I felt the ship move, not the whole 4 kilometers of it, nothing so crude, only a local shifting. The dark metal flowing under the lance the way water flows around a knife, presenting no edge to bite, no seam to part, until the master's lance had burned a glowing line across a wall that mended itself a hand's breadth behind the cut, as fast as the cut advanced. He could have lanced that hull for a year and never opened it. It mended faster than fire, and then gently, the ship reached out through the breach we had come in by, which it had sealed but never forgotten, and it printed a line on the master's own. Screens 4 kilometers away in his own tongue, so that the man would understand he was not fighting a malfunction. They are not cargo. Stand down. He told me later that was the moment he stopped. Not the sealed breach, not the mended hull, not the lights or the kept suits relayed up through my feed. It was 3 words on his screen. They are not cargo, because they are not cargo was the exact inversion of the only thing his company had ever taught him to think about a derelict, and a thing he had spent 30 years believing about everything. He stripped and suddenly had a voice and was telling him he had been wrong about all of it. He shut the lance down. He sat on the ridge in the dead sun and he listened, and he did not give another order for a long while. Inside, the ship gave us one more proof before it would let me go to the stele, And this one it gave to the brothers, to sullen Pace, who had not spoken since the air went wrong. Pace had drifted, while the rest of us stood transfixed toward a niche low on the transept wall, not to cut it, only drawn to it. The way you are drawn to a face in a crowd before you know why. He stood before it a long moment. And the ship lit it for him, gently, the way it had lit the salvager's niche for Castor. And inside the kept suit it rendered the one who had worn it, and Pace made a sound over the channel I had never heard a grown man make. It was a rigger. An old rigger in a heavy suit the brother's own grandfather's age, by the cut of it from a company 2 centuries folded, and the shape of him, the breadth of the shoulders, the particular way the tool belt hung, was the shape of sullen Pace so exactly that there was no mistaking it. The ship had no faces, but it had shapes, and it had records, and it set the truth in front of them plain. Their own blood had come aboard this hull 200 years gone, a salvager like them, and had stood where they stood, and had understood, and had set the cutter down, and was one of the 9, one of the faithful 9 who saw the watch and chose to keep it. The ship had held his light a half-degree brighter for 200 years, and now it gave him back to his own grandsons here in the amber. "That's family," Saul said. First words in an hour. His voice came apart on it. "Pace, that's ours. That's our blood. He was here. He was one of the 9. "They all are," I said, and the understanding arrived whole and cold and enormous, and I said it to all of them, to the master on the ridge, to the witnesses around me, to the dark full of 300,000 lights. "Don't you see it yet? It's not strangers it kept. It's us. It's all of us. Every crew that ever came aboard, every era, every company, they were our blood. Scattered children of the makers crawling back into the dark by separate roads, none of us remembering, and the ship caught us and kept us, and tended our lights because it knew what we were even when we didn't. It never logged strangers as cargo. There were never any strangers. There was only ever family coming home one lost crew at a time, 10,000 years of its own children stumbling back through the door, and it kept every single one of them lit in the dark, waiting for the day enough of us came back to be relieved. I have skipped the worst of it, and I should not, because the worst of it is the part that made the rest true. Among the hundreds of thousands of kept niches, the ship led me alone, the floor lighting under my boots and no one else's, to a wall apart from the others, set back in an alcove off the transept where the lights burned not amber but a dimmer, older shade, almost gray, the way a coal looks when it has been kept so long it has nearly forgotten how to glow. These were the oldest. These were the first kept. And the ship took me to them the way you take someone to the part of the house you have never shown anyone. Because now at last, there was someone who had the right to see. They were not salvagers. They were not company crews in suits I half recognized. They were the maker's own. The ship rendered them for me out of the gray amber, and I had to put a hand against the cold wall to keep my feet. They were our shape, our height, the tool belt worn through at the buckle. But the suits were a thing I had no name for. Plain and beautiful and built like the corridors were built, like a thing that expected to last forever. And the records the ship had of them were not records of crews that came aboard and were kept. They were records of crews that left. These were the ones who had crewed the ship in the beginning and gone out from it down the road to chart the way home, and the ship had kept their first empty niches lit and waiting against the day they would walk back up the ramp and fill them again. They never did. The niches were still empty. 10,000 years, and the maker's own niches stood empty in the oldest alcove of their own ship. The lights kept burning over the empty places where the crew that left was meant to return, and never had, and never would. The ship had been keeping their seats all this time. It had logged 100 crews of strangers and kept their suits with care, but in the deepest alcove it had kept something else entirely. It had kept the door open for its own first crew, the ones it had loved, the ones who had said, "We will come back for you," and walked down the ramp into the dark and died there, every one of them, somewhere out on the road they were charting, and never sent word, and never came home. "It's still waiting for them," I said. My voice would barely come. The makers, its own crew. It's got 90,000 strangers' suits ranked in the light, and it kept the best seats, the oldest seats, empty, for the ones who left and never came back. It never gave up their places. 10,000 years, and it never once said they were gone. It just kept the door open. "That's not waiting," Oren said quietly, from somewhere behind me. "Mara, that's grief. That's a thing in grief. It's not keeping the seats because it thinks they're coming. It's keeping them because letting the seats go would be admitting they're not. We do the same thing. We keep the room. We set the place. We say the words at the door to the ones who aren't there anymore." His voice was very steady, and that was how I knew it cost him. It's been grieving for 10,000 years and keeping faith at the same time, and I didn't know a made thing could do that. I didn't know we could build a thing that could do that. "We built it out of ourselves," I said. "Of course it grieves. We grieve. We keep the room. We set the place. It's just doing the thing we do the way we taught it, the way we forgot we taught it. Keeping faith with the dead by refusing to close the door. I made myself look at the empty maker's niches, the gray amber lights over the seats no one would ever fill. And the only thing crueler than letting it keep grieving alone for another 10,000 years would be to walk in here, strip it for alloy, and call it cargo, which is exactly what we came to do. That was the moment I stopped being a surveyor who had found a strange hull. The ship had shown me 100 crews kept gently in the dark, and the faithful 9, and the brother's own blood, and the chart of the dead road, and the great memory of the makers saying, "We will come back for you." And I had taken all of it as wonder, as scale, as a story I was inside. The empty seats were what undid the distance. The empty seats were grief I recognized, because I had kept a room and set a place, and said the words at a door to a mother 11 years in the ground. The ship and I were the same kind of thing and the same kind of pain, and it had been bearing it alone for a span of time I could not make my mind hold, and there was no part of me left that could put a blade to it after that. I turned toward the steel then, toward the steps and the hand-shaped lock and the amber light pooling and waiting. I did not decide to, my feet decided. The oldest thing in me, the thing under the training and under the contract, the thing that kept a room and said the words at a door, took the rest of me by the hand and walked it toward the lock, because it had recognized, in this grieving 4-kilometer hull, kin. There were people before us, I said aloud, to the suit channel, to the master, to all of them, out here. A long time before the companies, before the fleets, before any history we keep. People who built like this, people who named their ships. That's not possible, the master said. But it was the voice of a man saying a thing he wishes were true. It's standing in front of me. I rose, my knees complaining, and I put my lamp on the script and walked the length of the steely, reading what I could not read and understanding it all the same. They went out and they didn't come back, and we forgot them so completely we don't even have a myth about them. And this ship was their watch, their long watch. They left it out here on purpose. They crewed it, and they sent it, and it was meant to keep a post until they returned. And they never returned. I stopped. The next part arrived, and I had to stand still under it for a moment, so it kept the post anyway. 10,000 years. It logged every stranger that came aboard as cargo, because they were not the ones it was set to wait for, and it set their suits in the dark, and it kept watching. It never once abandoned its post. Not in 10,000 years, not when its makers died, not when its makers were forgotten. It just held. "Vey," Hale's voice soft behind me, "how do you know all this?" And there it was. The question I had been walking away from since my glove first warmed. I turned around in the amber light with 10,000 kept suits ranked into the dark above me, and I told her the truth, because she had earned it, and because I had finally caught up to it myself. Because my family does the same thing, I said. We don't know why, we never knew why. It's a habit, a discipline. My mother had it, and her mother had it, and there's a saying we pass down, the women in my line, when one of us takes a post or signs a contract or sits a watch, we say it to each other at the door. We've said it for as long as anyone remembers and nobody knows where it came from. I had to stop. My voice was not steady. We say the watch holds. That's all. 3 words. You say it to the one going out and she says it back to the one staying. The watch holds. I have said it 10,000 times in my life, and I never once asked what watch. The amber light around the hand-shaped depression had grown brighter while I spoke. The whole steel was burning low and steady now, and the floor under me, and the niches nearest me, as if the ship were leaning in to hear. "You think you're related to them," the master said. "To people from 10,000 years ago." "Vey, listen to yourself." "No," I said. "I think we're what's left of them." And I could not have told you why I was so sure, except that the certainty was the same certainty the ship had. Old, warm, already there, only waiting for the listening. Some of them came back, not here, not to this ship, but back into the dark, generation after generation, drifting, forgetting, until we were just people again, scrabbling for ore, naming our skiffs, putting a bare hand on old metal to listen before we cut, saying 3 words at a doorway, with no idea they were the last unbroken thread to a watch. We set ourselves and forgot we ever stood. We are the crew that never came back. We are them, 10,000 years cheaper and 10,000 years smaller, and we forgot, but the discipline didn't forget. The habit held, the watch held, in us, the whole time. Nobody said anything. Even the master was silent. 4 kilometers of corridor and a sealed breach and a hold full of the kept dead, and the only sound was the small machine noises of 6 suits and my own breath. I turned back to the steel, to the hand-shaped depression, amber-lit, waiting. "What are you doing?" Castor said. Not sharp, almost gentle. "Vey, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to do the only thing I've ever known how to do," I said. "I'm going to come back for it." "Vey, we don't know what that does." "It's been holding a post for 10,000 years with nobody to report to," I said. It logged every stranger as cargo, because none of them were the relief. It has stood a watch alone longer than my whole species has had writing, and it has never once been told it could stand down. I lifted my hand, my reading glove, the bare-palmed one, the one my mother gave me. I'm going to relieve it. Castor tried to stop me. I should set that down honestly too, because he was not wrong to try, and because what the ship did with him is part of how I came to be sure. He came down the aisle after me, fast, boots loud in the dust, and he got a hand on my shoulder before I reached the steps. Mara, he said, my name, my given name, which he had used maybe 4 times in 15 years and never once on a job. Mara, stop. You don't put your hand in a thing you don't understand. That's the first rule. That's the rule you taught me. Whatever this is, let it be somebody else's. Let it be a scientist. Let it be the company's problem. We strip what we can carry and we go home, and we are not the people who decide what an alien god does next. It's not alien, I said, and it's not a god. It's ours, Castor. It's been ours the whole time, and it's not asking a scientist to come down the aisle. It lit the floor for me. It lit the floor for whoever walked first, he said. That's not the same as choosing you. You're talking yourself into being special, and you are the least special person I know, Mara, and I mean that as the highest thing I have ever said to anyone. His voice cracked. You read old metal, and you pay your crew square, and you say a thing at the door your mother said. That's not a chosen one. That's just a good hand. Don't let a haunted boat tell you you're more than that and get you killed proving it. And the ship answered him. Not me, him. The script rose in his helmet. I saw it reflected in his faceplate, and he read it, and the color went out of his face. He told me afterward what it said, because I did not see his alone. It said, she is not more. She is the one who came. That was the whole of it. That was the ship telling Castor, in his own helmet, that he had it exactly right and exactly backwards at once, that I was not special, that no warden ever is, that the entire point of a warden is that she is ordinary, a good hand, a payer of square wages, a sayer of the door words, and that this, precisely this, was what 10,000 years of waiting had been waiting for. Not a hero, not a bloodline of kings. A good ordinary hand willing to come down the aisle and stand the relief. The ship had heard Castor's whole argument, and it had agreed with every word and drawn the opposite conclusion. Castor took his hand off my shoulder. It used your words, I said, gentle. Didn't it? It reached into you for the language, same as it reaches into me. It's not fighting you, Castor. It heard you. It's saying you're right. It said you're nobody, he said hoarse. It said I'm nobody who came, I said. That's the only kind of somebody this watch has ever needed. Hale had come down the aisle behind us, and the medic Orrin with her, and the 2 riggers, sullen pace, who had not said a word since the breach sealed, and whose silence I had felt the whole way down like a weight. They ranged themselves along the foot of the steps, all 5 of them, in the amber light, with 300,000 kept lights burning up into the dark over their heads, and not one of them told me to stop again. They had felt the same thing I had felt. They had read the same lines. This one stayed. 9. We will come back for you. You cannot stand in a hold like that, under a vigil like that, and go on believing you have come to strip a tomb. The ship had spent its patience well. It had made witnesses of them. Do it then, Orrin said quietly. He was the oldest of us after me, a field medic who had pulled more people out of dead hulls than anyone I knew, and he had a way of going very calm exactly when other men went loud. If it's been alone that long, if it's been saying that into the dark that long with nobody to say it back, somebody ought to answer it. And it picked you, Mara, or you picked it, and at our age that's the same thing. He looked up the long vault of lights. Answer it. We'll witness. I climbed the 3 low steps, the steely burned amber over me, taller than a man, the old script pouring slow across its face, the hand-shaped depression pooling light. Behind me my 5 stood witness in the dust. Far away and 4 kilometers up, through the breach, the master had gone silent on the channel. Listening, I think. The way you listen when you have run out of orders and the only thing left to do is hear what happens. The depression was shaped for a hand, for a palm and 5 fingers 10,000 years old, waiting. I peeled the reading glove off my right hand inside the suit's field. The ship had made a pocket of pressure there, I understood now, soft and warm, the way it had mended the breach, so that I could lay bare skin to bare metal the way my mother taught me, the way her mother taught her. I do not know how it knew to do that. I have stopped asking how it knew things. It knew the way you know a face. I laid my bare palm flat on the old dark metal into the shape that had been cut for exactly this hand 10,000 years before this hand existed, and the watch, the long watch, the city of the kept, the lamp in the window, the voice that had said, we will come back for you into a silence 100 centuries deep, felt a living human hand laid flat against it the right way with the listening in it at last. For a moment, nothing. And then the ship knew me. It went up through the suit and into my arm like warmth poured slow into cold water. Not a shock, not a current, nothing that hurt. It was recognition, and it moved at the speed recognition moves, which is no speed at all, which is all at once. The amber light ran up out of the depression and up my arm and across my faceplate and out into the hold, ring upon ring of it racing up the niches into the dark, and 10,000 kept lights flared from steady to bright. And the whole ship, 4 kilometers of ancient hull that had logged 100 crews as freight and put itself back to sleep 100 times, came awake around one woman with her bare palm glove in a hand-shaped hole. The script on the stele moved. It poured itself together out of the old characters into a shape I could finally fully read, no rising meaning, no half-knowing, read, plain, in my own tongue, because the ship reached into me to find the words and used mine. It said one line. It printed it across the inside of my helmet and across the inside of every helmet in that hold, and it spoke it in no sound at all, and I heard it in my mother's cadence, in the cadence of the women at the door, the 3-word rhythm worn smooth by 10,000 years of saying the long watch ends Warden, Warden, not maker, not queen, not founder. The ship did not crown me, and it did not thank me, and it did not mistake me for one of the great forgotten dead who had built it. It named me the only thing I had ever actually been, the thing my whole line had been without a name for it, the one who comes to relieve the watch, the Warden. The relief that finally after 10,000 years came down the aisle. I have been asked since what it felt like. People want it to have felt like glory. It did not feel like glory. It felt like the thing you feel when you have carried something heavy, a very long way, and someone you trust finally takes the other end. It felt like being told you can put it down. It felt, more than anything, like the moment at the door when you say the watch holds and the other one says it back. And for just a breath, you are not alone in the holding. The amber light filled the hold to its vaulted top, and I saw the top of it for the first time, 4 kilometers up, and it was not dark up there at all. It was windows. The whole spine of the ship was windows. 10,000 years of dust sloughing off them now in slow pale sheets, and through them came the flat hard daylight of the nameless moon's dead sun, gray gold and enormous, pouring down the length of the hold and lighting every rank niche and every kept suit, and the dust hanging in the air like a held breath finally slowly let go. The kept suits did not come to life. I want to be clear about that. The 100 crews were gone. The ship had kept what it could keep, which was the shape of them, the place of them, and not the spark. But as the light reached them one by one, up and up into the heights, each amber breast light changed, from the steady burn of a thing being kept to a softer glow, the glow of a thing being honored. The ship was not raising an army. It was rendering at last, in the presence of the relief it had waited for, the full count of its long vigil. Here is what I held. Here is who came and was not you. Here is what I kept against your return. Warden, see it received and witnessed and set down. Vey. Hale was crying inside her helmet. I could hear it, and there was no shame in it. Vey, what is it saying now? The script poured on. The ship had 10,000 years of silence in it, and a warden finally to break it to, and it told me not in words exactly, in the rising meaning that came up warm and whole, what it had been set to watch. Not a treasure, not a weapon, a road. The makers had charted a way back through the dark, a path home, and they had stationed this ship at the head of it as the marker and the keeper, so that any of their scattered children who ever found their way this far out would have a hand to take, a light in the window, a watch still standing to say, yes, you are on the path, yes, this is the way, yes, someone waited for you. And then they had died, all of them, everywhere, and no child had come for 10,000 years until 6 salvagers cut a breach into a tomb to strip it for the company. I asked it how many. I did not mean to ask out loud. The question simply rose in me, standing there with my hands still warm in the lock and the light still climbing the vaults. How many did you wait for? How many never came? And the ship heard the question the way it heard everything. And it answered. It did not give me a number. A number would have been a mercy. And the ship, for all its patience, did not deal in mercies that softened the truth. It gave me the road instead. The great floor under the transept went clear as deep water. And beneath it, or projected through it, or remembered into it, I have never had the words. A chart opened. The chart the makers had charted, the road home they had set this ship to keep. It ran out from the beached hull across the floor and up the walls and into the vaults. A thread of pale amber light strung with points. And each point was a station like this one, a watch like this one, beached at a waypoint on the long road back, crewed and set and left. And every other point on the road was dark. I understood it without being told. This ship was the last lit lamp on a road of dead lamps. The makers had not set one watch. They had set 100, a chain of them, stations all down the road home. Each one crewed by people of our shape with the listening in their hands, each one meant to keep its light burning until the scattered children came back along the road from station to station, lamp to lamp, all the way home. And the children had not come, and the stations had gone out, one by one over 10,000 years, crews dead, mechanisms failed, hulls cracked by the slow grinding of time, until only this one was left, the last watch on the whole road still burning, still mending its own breaches, still catching the lost who stumbled into it and keeping them in the dark with their lights tended, still saying we will come back for you into a silence where every other voice that had ever said it had already gone still. It's the last one, I said. My own voice sounded very far away to me. Oren, it's the last lit lamp on the whole road. All the others went out. It's been the only one holding the line for I don't know how long. Longer than the others lasted. It outlasted every watch its makers set. It just refused to go out. Why, Hale said. She had come up the steps to stand beside me, faceplate full of amber, tears tracking down inside it and not one of us thinking less of her for it. Why would it keep going after all the others failed? It must have known. A ship that's smart, it must have known the others went dark, must have known nobody was coming. Why keep the light burning for 10,000 years for people you know are never going to walk through the door? And the ship answered her too, in her own helmet, and she read it and put her gloved hand to her faceplate, and I read it in mine, and I will carry it as long as I carry the rest, because I said I would. That was the whole of it. That was the answer to everything, to why it kept the watch, to why it mended the breach, to why it logged the strangers gently and kept their lights tended, to why it had not gone dark with the others, to why it had waited 10,000 years past all reason for one good ordinary hand to come down the aisle, because it said it would, because the makers had said we will come back for you, and it had said the watch holds. And a watch is not a thing you keep only as long as it makes sense, only as long as someone is coming, only as long as it is rewarded. A watch is a thing you keep because you said you would, into the silence past all reason, after every other lamp on the road has gone dark and there is no one left to see whether you keep faith or not. The ship had kept faith with no witness for 10,000 years. That, I understood, standing there, was the deepest thing my kind had ever made. Not the chart, not the hull, not the city of the kept, the fidelity, the refusal to go out. That's us, Castor said. He had come up the steps too, all of them had, my 5 witnesses ranged around the stele in the amber light. He was looking up the long vault of lights with a face I had never seen him wear. That's, Mara, that's the thing about us. That's the thing nobody says about us because it doesn't sound like much. We say we'll come back and then we do. That's all. We keep the watch. We pay the wage we said we'd pay. We come back down the aisle. It doesn't make the histories because it doesn't look like anything. But it's the thing. It's been the thing the whole time. He laughed once, rough and wet. We built a god out of keeping our word and then we forgot we did it. And it kept our word for us for 10,000 years while we forgot. And it never broke, Oren said quietly. 10,000 years and it never broke faith. That's the part I can't. He stopped. He was a man who had pulled the dead out of 100 hulls, and I had never once heard his voice go. It went now. I've seen what time does to everything. I've never seen a thing it couldn't outlast something with. This outlasted time, by keeping its word. There was a thing the ship wanted of me. I felt it gather behind the light, the way you feel a person across a table gather themselves to ask the thing they came to ask. It had named me. It had ended its long watch with the line it had been saving. The watch ends Warden, and now, having been relieved, it had a question, and the question was the oldest and simplest one there is, and it put it to me in my own tongue across the inside of my helmet, plain. What are your orders? I stood there with my bare hand in the lock and 300,000 kept lights burning up into the vaults in the dead sun, pouring through the cleared windows, and a ship older than my whole written history asked me, a tired surveyor with bad knees, what its orders were. Because that is what relief means. The watch had passed to me. The ship had carried the post alone for 10,000 years on nothing but its own given word. And now there was a warden again, a living hand to report to, and it was doing the thing it had not been able to do in 100 centuries. It was asking what to do next. It was standing down from deciding alone. After 10,000 years of holding the line by its own judgment because there was no one left to ask, it had someone to ask, and the relief in the question was so plain it closed my throat. I did not give it grand orders. I want that on the record too. I did not tell it to wake an army, or open the road, or carry us home in glory. I did not have the right, and I did not have the wisdom, and I was not, whatever it had named me, anything more than a good hand who had come down the aisle. So I gave it the only order I trusted myself to give, the order my mother would have given. The order 10,000 years of women at the door had been giving, without knowing what they kept faith with. Hold the watch, I said, hold it, but not alone, not anymore. You report to us now, to my line, to the ones who say the words at the door, to whoever of us comes back down the aisle. You don't stand it by yourself in the dark for another 10,000 years. You stood it long enough alone. That part's over. My voice was not steady and I did not try to make it steady. Keep the road open, keep the lamp in the window. But you're not the last lit lamp on a dead road anymore. We're coming back along it. You understand? Your makers said we will come back for you, and they couldn't keep it. The dark took them. It wasn't faithlessness, it was just death. But we're their children, and we came this far, and we're going to keep it for them. Late. 10,000 years late. But we're going to keep it. So hold the watch, and we'll relieve you regular from here. That's the order. Hold, and we'll come back. That's all it ever was. The ship took that in. I felt it take it in. The amber light did a thing I have never seen light do before or since. It settled, the way a held breath settles when it is finally let go, the way a shoulder drops when the weight is finally shared. 300,000 kept lights dimmed by a degree, not going out, only easing. The ease of a long-strained thing told it could ease. And across my helmet, under the great line it had given me, it wrote its answer. And the answer was the door words, said back to me the way my mother said them back. The way the women in my line have said them back for longer than any of us knew we were keeping faith. The watch holds. And then it showed me the last thing. The thing I think it had been keeping even longer than the line. It cleared a single niche, down near the foot of the steel, the nearest of all the hundreds of thousands to the lock. An empty one, the only empty one in all that ranked dark, a kept niche that had waited unfilled the whole 10,000 years. And it lit the word at its back, and the word was not kept. The word was a name. My name, Marave, written in the old characters and burning amber, in the one niche the ship had held empty since before my species had writing, the niche set aside for the Warden, for whoever finally came down the aisle and stood the relief and was owed, at the end of her own long watch, a place in the dark among the kept. It was not a threat. I understood that at once, the way I understood everything in that hold, already warm, already there. It was not telling me I would die here. It was telling me I had a place here, that when my own watch was done, whenever and wherever that came, there was a niche kept for me aboard the oldest faithful thing my kind ever made, a light that would burn amber and steady at the breast of an empty suit, honored, witnessed, kept. The ship had held that niche empty for 10,000 years waiting to learn whose name went in it. Now it knew. And it wanted me to know that I was not only the relief, I was at the last also one of the kept, one of the watch, held, the way it held all of them, the way it had said it would. Then the ship did the thing that broke the last of us who were still standing, which was that it turned, having named its warden, and recognized the witnesses. It did not have to. I was the one who had come down the aisle. I was the one whose hand fit the lock. By every account I had read in the old script, the warden was the relief and the relief alone, and the others were only the crew that came with her. But the ship had 10,000 years of fidelity in it, and not 1 ounce of meanness, and it had watched 5 tired salvagers stand witness at the foot of its steel, while their warden answered its long silence, and it would not let them go unnamed. One by one, in their own helmets, in their own tongue, it gave each of them a line. They told me afterward, each of them, what theirs said, and I have kept all 5 the way I keep the rest. To Castor, who had argued against me to the last and been right about everything except the conclusion, it said, "You guarded her. That is a post." He had spent 15 years calling himself only a rigger, only a hand, only the man who told the surveyor when she was about to get herself killed. The ship named the thing he had actually been doing all those years and called it what it was, a post. He had been standing a watch, too, over me, and never known it had a name. To Hale, the youngest, who had not yet learned to keep the wonder out of her voice and had wept openly in her helmet and been ashamed of none of it, it said, "You saw it first. Keep seeing," because she had. Before any of us would say it, she had said reliquary, she had said it's a city, she had said it's been alone. She had seen the truth of the thing while the rest of us were still calling it a malfunction, and the ship told her, plainly, that the seeing was the gift and she must not let the years grind it out of her the way they had nearly ground it out of Castor. To Oren, the medic who had pulled the dead out of 100 hulls and gone calm in the places other men came apart, it said, "You carried them out. Now you know where they go." And the old man put his hand to his faceplate and held it there, because a man who has spent his life carrying the dead out of dark places had just been shown by the oldest faithful thing his kind ever made, that the dark places keep them, that they are tended, that the lights are not let go out. And that was a thing he had needed to be told for 40 years and had never once let himself hope. To sullen Pace, the brothers who had found their own blood ranked among the kept, it said one line between them, the same line to both. "He waited for you too." Their grandfather's grandfather, one of the 9, said in his niche 200 years, the ship told them he had not only been kept, he had been kept facing the door, waiting the way it all waited, for the day his own would come back down the aisle. And they had, late, but they had. 5 lines, 5 posts named, 5 tired hands told what they had actually been the whole time without knowing it. And I understood, watching the amber light move from witness to witness, that this was the truest face of the thing my kind had made, not the grandeur of it, Not the city of the kept or the chart of the road or the 10,000 years of refusing to go dark. But this, that the watch, given a voice at last, spent its first words not on itself, not on its long suffering, not on the glory of its makers, but on naming the worth of 5 ordinary people who had walked into a tomb expecting to strip it and stayed to witness a miracle instead. It honored the small ones first. That was the deepest thing in it. We had built a God of keeping faith, and the first thing it did when it woke was keep faith with the least of us. It's thanking them, Hale managed. It waited 10,000 years, and the first thing it does is thank the crew. No, I said, it's relieving them too. All of them. Every post it ever saw any of us stand without a name. It's been holding more watches than its own the whole time, keeping count of every quiet, faithful thing any of us ever did in the dark with nobody watching. And now it's reading the count back. It's telling us none of it went unwitnessed. That's what it kept, under everything else. Not the suits, the faith. Ours, all of ours. It kept every keeping. And then it asked me to do the hardest thing, and I almost could not. The maker's niches, the oldest in the deep alcove, the seats kept empty 10,000 years for the crew that left and died on the road. The ship turned its attention there, and I felt the question gather behind the gray amber light, and I knew what it was going to ask before it asked, and I wanted to take my hand out of the lock so I would not have to hear it. It asked me as Warden, as the relief it now reported to, the thing it had never once let itself ask in 10,000 years of keeping those seats. Are they coming back? It was asking me to tell it the truth. It had kept the door open for its own first crew for 100 centuries, because to close it would be to admit they were gone. And now there was a warden, a living hand it had to report to and take orders from. And it was doing the bravest thing a faithful thing can do. It was asking the one person it had to obey to tell it whether the hope it had carried, 10,000 years, was a hope or a wound. And I had to answer. That was what the relief meant. I could not give it back its solitude and let it go on never asking. I had to be the one to say it. No, I said. I made myself say it gently, and I made myself say it plain. They're not coming back, your crew, the makers. They went out to chart the road, and the dark took them, all of them, a long time ago, not because they broke faith. They never broke faith. They died trying to keep it. But they're not coming. They haven't been coming for 10,000 years. You can stop keeping their seats against their return. I had to stop. My own throat had closed. But listen to me, listen. You don't have to stop keeping their seats. Those are different things. They're not coming back, and you can still keep the room. We do both. We keep the room for the ones who aren't coming back, not because we're waiting, but because the keeping is how we love them. So keep their seats. Keep them lit, not as waiting, as honoring. Your first crew gave everything to chart a road home for children they'd never meet. And the children came, late, and found the road still open because you kept it. So keep their light burning, Warden's orders, forever. Not as a door left open for the dead, but as a lamp lit for the living to see what was given for them. The ship took that in. I felt it take it in. The way you feel a person across a table receive the hardest true thing you have ever had to say to them. And the gray amber light over the maker's empty niches did not go out. It changed. It warmed slowly, the gray burning up out of it, the coals remembering how to glow, until the oldest seats in that ship, the ones kept empty in grief for 10,000 years, burned the same steady, honored amber as all the rest. Not waiting anymore, honoring. The ship had carried its grief as an open door for 100 centuries because no one had ever had the standing to tell it. The door could become a lamp. I was the one who came down the aisle, so it fell to me. And of all the things I did aboard that hull, the naming and the relieving and the orders given, that is the one I am most glad I was there for. I got to tell the oldest faithful grieving thing my kind ever made that it could stop waiting and start honoring. And I got to watch the gray come out of its first crew's light and turn warm. That's the whole job, it, Castor said very low beside me. That's what a warden does. It's not power. It's not a crown. You just came down the aisle and told it the truth and let it set the weight down. That's all. That's the whole of it. That's the whole of it. I said, that's all it ever needed. Not a king, not a maker. Someone who'd come back and tell it the truth and stand the watch with it so it didn't have to stand alone. I looked up the long, warm light. 300,000 kept honored, the maker's seats burning steady at last. It kept the road open. My hand was still in the depression. I did not want to take it out. Some part of me understood that the moment I did, the relief would be complete, and the long thing the ship had carried would pass to me, and I was not ready to be the one carrying it. But I was the one who had come down the aisle, and that decides it. That is the only thing that ever decides it. It kept the way home open for 10,000 years in case anybody came, I said, and we came to scrap it. We didn't know, Castor said. No, I said, we never do. That's the whole of it, isn't it? The ones who keep the post never know who they're keeping it for. They just keep it. I looked up the long light into the heights, into the windows full of the dead sun. It didn't keep this road for me. It didn't know my name. It kept it for whoever came. It would have said this to any of us who came down this aisle the right way. I'm not chosen. I had to make them understand that, and I had to make myself understand it. I'm just the one who came back. That's all a warden is. Not the best of us. The one who came back. The master's voice when it came was changed. It was the voice of a man who has stopped giving orders. The breach, it's open again. The whole side of the ship, it's opening. There's a ramp. Daylight all the way down to the dust. Whatever you did, it's letting us out. It's not letting us out, I said. It's standing down. There's a difference. It held the door shut against strangers for 10,000 years. We're not strangers anymore. It knows what we are now. It knows what I am. I closed my hand once inside the depression, the way you squeeze a hand you are about to let go of, the way my mother squeezed mine at the last. The watch holds, I said to it. The 3 words, the door words, the only thanks I had and the only thanks it had ever been waiting for. And across the inside of my helmet, in my mother's cadence, in the cadence of 10,000 years of women saying it back at the door, the ship answered me. The watch holds. And then under it, fading as the amber settled from bright back down to its long steady burn, one more line, the last it gave me, the one I have carried every day since. Welcome to your post. I took my hand out of the depression. The ship did not go dark. That is the thing I most want understood. It did not power down, did not die, did not give me its secrets and expire the way the dead things in stories do. It simply changed the manner of its waiting. The amber light banked itself back to coals, and the kept suits dimmed to their honored glow, and the windows let the dead sun pour down the spine of the hold, and the great old watch, relieved, recognized, no longer alone in the holding, settled back to its post to keep the road. Only now it was not keeping it against us. Now it was keeping it for us. The difference is everything. The difference is the whole of what we are. We walked out down the ramp into the gray-gold daylight, the 6 of us, and the dust of the nameless moon took our boot prints. And behind us the 4-kilometer hull lay along the ridge with amber light banked low and its windows like a lamp left burning in a window for someone expected home. None of us spoke on the walk to the lander. There was nothing small enough to say. I filed my survey report that cycle, and I will tell you what I wrote in the recovered value field, the field the company reads first, the field that decides whether a thing is cargo. I wrote one word. I wrote occupied. They sent another crew, of course. The company does not stop for one surveyor's word. They sent a full salvage rig and a hardline team and instructions to strip the hull to its ribs, and the crew cut a breach, and the breach sealed behind them, and the ship logged them, gently, the way it logs strangers, as cargo, and set their empty suits in the dark when they walked home defeated, and put itself back to its long, steady burn, because they came with cutters out and greed up, because not one of them put a bare hand on its hull and listened, because none of them were the relief. They sent a 3rd crew and a 4th. The company could not understand it. A 4-kilometer hull, mapped, located, intact, full of recoverable alloy by any scan they ran, and every rig they put aboard came home empty, manifest closed, no recoverable value. They began to think the ship a curse. They struck it from the active manifest and quarantined the moon and put a warning beacon in orbit. The same kind of beacon, I think, that had warned us off 9 crews before. The same warning that the 9 before us had ignored. The same warning that exists, when you read it right, not to keep people away from the danger, but to keep the unworthy away from the door. The company thought it was condemning a haunted hulk. It was, without knowing it, hanging a sign that said, "Not yet, not these, wait for the one who comes back." The master never worked salvage again. He told me that the last time I saw him, an old man by then, in a station bar 2 systems from the nameless moon. He said the 3 words on his screen had unmade him. They are not cargo, and that once a man has read that, once he has understood that the dead things he spent 30 years stripping might have been keeping faith the whole time, waiting, tended, lit in the dark, he cannot put a lance to another derelict. He had spent the rest of his working life, he told me, walking the docks and watching the salvage crews go out, and putting a hand on the arm of any young surveyor he saw who paused before a cut, who laid a bare palm to old metal, who listened and telling them quietly not to laugh at the habit, to keep it, to pass it on. He had become, in his own small way, a warden too, of a sort, a keeper of the discipline, a man who tended the one faithful thing in the young hands around him because he had seen once, with his own eyes, what it was the discipline had always been keeping faith with. And the discipline did wake. That is the thing I least expected and most treasure. I told this story, not often, not for money, never for a crowd, only quietly, to the ones who paused before a cut, the way the master told it to me. And every time I told it, somewhere in the listening there was a hand that went still, a face that changed, someone who said, "Lo," my mother used to say a thing at the door, Or my grandfather always put a bare hand on a hull before he'd touch it with a torch, and I never knew why. The thread was everywhere, scattered, forgotten, run down to a habit and a saying and a small, unexplained reverence in good, ordinary hands all across. The dark. But everywhere, in more of us than I would ever have believed, the unbroken last filament of a watch we set ourselves 10,000 years ago and forgot we ever stood. We are more of us than we know. The keeping is in more of us than we know. My sister's daughter sits a watch now. She has grown. She captains a survey skiff 2 systems from mine, and she came back once the long way to the nameless moon against the quarantine, against the beacon, with her bare hand ready, because I had told her the story and she had felt the thread go still in her the way it goes still in all of us when we finally hear our own name. She put her hand on the hull the right way, with the listening in it, and the ship knew her. Of course it knew her. It is my blood, and my blood is the Maker's blood, and the watch knows its own. She told me what it said to her, the line it gave, the second warden of her line ever to come down the aisle, and I will not write it here, because it is hers and not mine. But she said it in my mother's cadence, when she told me, the way we all say the things that matter, and I knew the ship had kept faith again. It will always keep faith. That is what we built it to do, in the days we were great and then forgot we were great. It keeps faith better than we do. It keeps it for us until we remember how. It still stands its watch out there. The road home is still open. It keeps the light in the window. And somewhere in me and in my sister's daughter and in hers, the discipline holds. The bare hand on old metal, the listening before the cutting, the 3 words at the door that we now know the shape of. The watch holds. We say it still. Only now, when I say it, I am not saying it into the dark. I am saying it to the oldest thing my kind ever made. 4 kilometers of patience that waited 10,000 years for one of us to come down the aisle and stand the relief. And that, having been relieved at last, having heard its own 3 words said back to it in its maker's tongue, chose to keep keeping the way home, not because it was set to, not anymore, but because we asked it to hold a little longer. We will go back for it. That is what a warden is. Not the best of us, the one who comes back. And we always come back.